today, because of your two talks, and hopefully mine will continue this theme, I'm feeling because we put them in the right place, we have them at the right level of stocks, and we know how to do that. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a project that I've had the pleasure to lead over the last 10 years called PREDICT. It is funded by U.S. Agency for International Development. It's coming to an end now, but its aim was really to do just that, to go out and say, what if we knew more about these viruses ahead of time, knew where they were, knew the host, knew how people might be exposed, how we might be able to understand better threats in advance. Would people change behavior? That's a big, big challenge, whether or not people will or won't change behavior. I won't ask anybody to raise their hands if they're smokers or vapors or anything, but we know species. Hopefully humans aren't becoming one of those, but and available to infect whatever target. For me, in the beginning of my career, it was much more about conserving endangered species. Hopefully humans aren't becoming one of those, but who knows, climate change, let's not go there today. Okay. We trained more than 6,000 people in this One Health approach to work together collaboratively and to be safe and secure about how they are handling animal samples, people in clinics, how to use PPE, how to ship samples safely. That really probably is more important for the world, basic hygiene and safety, than the discoveries we made. Shoot, are you recording? Don't record me on that. So, the other thing that is, it's extensive, right? And so what's going on that this virus, and we are looking hard, so thousands and thousands of bats to find 5, right? We're looking hard, but what's going on with whether or not this could be more widely distributed for something we had never found before? And again, I'll just go back to, is that important or not? Well, right now, China would say that's important, right? Because something similar is going on. Not found in humans before. Seems it's been found in animals before, but we don't have sequence to compare. So we'll see when they release it. Okay, so this houses, and we found them, the ones that were positive in people's houses. Now the virus it appears in VSV systems, so we're not working with live virus in the lab, although we did export virus to CDC, and I think it's coming to you now, right? You're working on an MTA, I think, to get it from CDC. Yeah, so hopefully those labs that can safely do additional work on whole virus will do that. We're working in a recombinant system, VSV, and it appears to be able to infect human cells. It appears very, very similar in its sort of mechanics to how Ebola Zaire works. We've found about 3 differences in the glycoprotein receptor sort of combinations, and only one of those very small differences seems to be coding for it to get into cells, but not quite as easily as Ebola Zaire. We've also found a couple differences in how it works in the interferon pathway. That's super interesting because it helps us to start to say which hosts have this sort of mechanisms with interferon that make the host easier to keep it alive and circulating, and which hosts are more likely to wipe it out. So we can even get more information like my risk map, but from a virological standpoint. And I'm going to stop on that level of detail because I'm not a virologist, and there are smarter people in the room for that. And our team, Dr. Tracy Goldstein at Davis and Dr. Simon Anthony at Columbia University are doing some amazing work along with colleagues at CDC, AFRAMS, and hopefully NIAID as well. Okay, but while we're found it at other sites because they were working there too. And I think a really nice advancement and change in the scientific community is we know each other, we're talking, there's less sort of than earlier in my career anyway, feeling of, sort of a race to publish that. Instead, we got together and we just did one paper. We said, why should we race each other? And you're doing good work, we're doing good work. Let's see what's similar, what's different. Let's put it together and do one paper. And so I'm really sort of feeling positive about that too, about the academic community changing its ways and starting to work together. Okay, so a big part of the success here, I think, is that communication piece. And if I'm honest, and if we had a chance to get a glass of wine and it wasn't being recorded, I could talk to you more about the struggles around communication, especially in countries that had horrible traumatic losses to a disease such as this situation with Ebola in these 3 most affected countries. So there were really extreme issues around finding a new virus that looks like an Ebola, so the Bomboli virus, then finding another filovirus like Marburg. And so working with the governments, also governments being more volatile than our own, which is sometimes hard to imagine, and turnovers of governments and how all that happened. First time in my career, there's been really threats against people that work for us on our team of bodily harm, death, those kinds of things, over findings. And so communicating findings became just a paramount issue that maybe as we're going through and getting our PhDs and everything else, we're not really trained to do or think about. And so we had put in very strict rules in place about how we would get information cleared by the governments. We believe the wildlife and the viruses, even of the countries, are the property of those countries. Information cleared by the governments. We believe the wildlife and the viruses, even of the countries, are the property of those countries. They maybe should be the property of the world, but until we're one big, citizenry, I don't know. No, this feels like science fiction. Of the world, but until we're one big citizenry, I don't know. No, this feels like science fiction. Countries are where we sort of set that bar. So we worked very closely, both with our U.S. missions, because it's U.S. funded, but with the countries, and then very closely considering until we were able to communicate the community concerns. And that was, maybe that sounds kind of arrogant for me standing here in the U.S. to say, considering what the communities, but all of our staff are from the communities. So in every country where we work, our staff are from those countries. We try not to have expat staff working. So I think we had a reasonable viewpoint. Okay, and again, the press and all of that was handled by the Sierra Leoneans, because that's who it should be handled by. And when they asked us, we would support, but it wasn't like, we Americans are here to tell you what we found in your country and aren't we fabulous. We're obviously there, but it was a collaborative effort, and then it was handled by the countries. And I think that's super important to think about, and depending on where you are in your level of career, think about building your teams appropriately so that you can anticipate and be ready for that. Doesn't mean career, think about building your teams appropriately so that you can, anticipate the consequences of what you might find and be ready for that. Doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money and build this big team, but you need to have the partnerships set up in advance. Now we're appreciative. Okay, and again, the press and all of that was handled by the Sierra Leoneans, because that's who it should be handled by. And when they asked us, we would support, but it wasn't like, we Americans are here to tell you what we found in your country and aren't we fabulous. We're obviously there, but it was a collaborative effort, and then it was handled by the countries. And I think that's super important to think about, and depending on where you are in your level of career, think about building your teams appropriately so that you can, anticipate the consequences of what you might find mind and be ready for that. Doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money and build this as well as another group. So we're finding that these things, once you do put them sort of out there and on the watch list, it's not just wasted. People start to look and people start to pay attention, and it gets into the hands of those communities as well. Again, thinking about how we may stage vaccine, how we may stage PPE, how we may stage therapeutics to be ready in areas where these things are more of a risk. In Liberia, we found Zaire. And we've got a fragment. We don't have the whole virus yet. We're working hard to get
My name is Julia Shaletsky. I'm the Executive Director of CENT, the Center for Emerging and Neglected Diseases. And we're very happy at US University, so we're trying to change that. And thirdly, we also would like to catalyze new research in these areas. And to that end, we've just established the first UC Berkeley Drug Discovery Center here at the university. So first of all, very importantly, I want to thank our sponsors for this event. We are very happy to be able to keep this event free, so nobody has any barriers in attending. Our platinum sponsor this year has been Gilead, very generously supported this, so let's give them a hand. Our platinum sponsor this year has been Gilead, very generously supported this, so let's give them a hand. In attending. Our platinum sponsor this year has been Gilead, very generously supported this, so let's give them a hand. And also more sponsors, the Department of Molecular and Cell Biology, VCRO's office, Vir Bioscience.